forward on this. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Dearly Not So Departed Beyond Death. And today I have the honor and privilege of having a dear, dear friend with us, Debbie McDermott. She is, her business is Sunshine State of Mind Services. And I'm going to let you say what it is because I know I'm going to butcher it. So tell us a little bit, just give us a brief little overview of what that is.
Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you. And Sunshine State of Mind Services offers subconscious belief transformation. And just really quick, so when we, from the time we're born to the time we're age 7, we're just soaking in our environment and soaking in all our caregivers' beliefs. And a lot of times those beliefs that we download into our subconscious don't serve us for the rest of our lives. And what I do as a facilitator is to help people identify and install new subconscious beliefs so they can live more empowered, peaceful, richer, healthier journeys.
Love it. Love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about that at the end. And I want people to know how they can get in touch with you. But today, let's focus right now. So I've known Debbie for quite a few years, and we met online. We've never actually met in person, but we met online. And we are definitely soul sisters. And Debbie and I have had wonderful conversations over the years. And a couple of years ago, her beautiful grandmother, who was almost 100 years old, made her transition. And so what I'd love for you to share, Debbie, is share as much as you feel comfortable sharing about who your grandmother was and where she came from, because she was an incredible woman and she had an incredible story. And then I would love to hear, let's talk about what your relationship was when she was physical and what it's like now. And when she made her transition, when she changed forms into non-physical.
Okay, great. So yeah, my grandmother was born in Poland. She lived in Poland until about the middle of her life, maybe a little bit even past that, and was there during the war. Her whole life, up until the time.
We're talking World War II, like in the Nazi era.
Correct. Yes. So she was born in 1922, and in the 40s in Poland. I mean, her whole life was difficult. It was traumatic. It was comprised of experiences that we cannot even imagine. And I know that from things that she told me and her children have shared with me. Obviously, my mother is one of her children, and she just lived her life basically in PTSD, Janet. She was scared of a lot of things. I don't remember her laughing very often or being relaxed very often. There was just a sort of a permanent fear, a deep fear, and rightly so, based on what she had experienced. And the beliefs that I downloaded from her were traumatic. They were based on her experiences, obviously, and they really shaped the beginning of my life as well. But her life, even after moving to the States, was difficult. She brought all her children with her husband as well, and emigrated to the United States, which was a courageous thing for them to do, but really welcome. And they worked hard here as well. And she had a very quiet life after they moved here, but it was really very much defined by her trauma. She really didn't go out much.
She was shrouded in just a cloud of fear, basically. She just, because of her life experience in those early years back in Poland, she just, it was just something that she could never move beyond. and she was shrouded in like a cloud.
Yeah, I mean, she just couldn't identify herself any other way. There were a lot of moments of joy in her life. You know, she had a beautiful family. And after coming to this country, I can't even tell you from her viewpoint how different life must have been. But there were moments of joy, but I don't remember them often for her. You know, you could see the angst in her movements and on her face, and everything was just very serious about her life and her feelings. And as you said, she lived to be nearly 100. At the end of her life, she was having a lot of memories of trauma that would really define her days, and it was tough to see her, you know, have those memories, and it was tough for her caregivers. She lived with my mom for quite a long time before the end of her life, and when she made her transition back to non-physical, it was April of 2020, and the pandemic had just started. And I was in the middle of moving cross country at the time, and it wasn't until a few months after I settled into my new home that I had contact with her again. And, you know, our relationship in the physical was heavy. I don't remember, I remember feeling very loved by her, but there was also just a lot of fear, a lot of protection, a lot of, I can't think of the word. You know, there's reasons for doing things, and she would always, you know, give you consequences for not doing things. You know, it was always the negative. She was a lovely woman, a very heart-based woman, and that's the way she could relate, you know, based on her experiences. But then when she contacted me, or I believe there were always in contact with the non-physical, but I was ready to receive her at that time. And my house was very quiet, you know, I was settling in, unpacking, and it was in the moments where I was just very non-resistant and quiet. You know, I might be doing the laundry, I might be washing the dishes, that I started to hear her. You know, not necessarily hear someone like I'm hearing your voice, but
Yeah.
I could hear her in my mind, and it was clearly her, and she was clearly so different than I had known her in the physical. She was funny and flirty and just really jovial and full, you know, full of life, vibrant. And she and I had connections, and still do, over and over again. And they just get deeper and funnier, honestly, because a lot of times I will be engaged in some kind of a task, and here she comes into my inner experience, and I can hear her speaking. And sometimes her words in her accent will come out of my mouth.
Wow. I love that. I love that. I love
It's
that.
just great.
It's just
And
it speaks to the fact that yes, she is no longer in this physical body, in the flesh, blood, and bony body, but her energy lives on, and she's still just as, even more so, laser focused from a different perspective of pure positive energy and pure positive love. And this is just, I don't know, Debbie, this to me is just one of the greatest love stories.
it really is. That's a beautiful way to describe it. And, you know, the funny thing is, as I'm saying to you that I knew it was her, when we connected after she made her transition, I knew it was her. And yet she was a completely different person. You know, she didn't have any of the negativity and the pain and the dragging down that she had had in the physical. And she was able to really be her true self, which, as I said, was funny, really funny, and excited and jubilant and vibrant. And it's just so fun connecting with her now, because, you know, I know that this isn't everyone's experience, where they have a very heavy and difficult life and then make a transition to back to their pure positive energy, love. But in this case, the difference is so stark. And she and I just have the best time now connecting. It's just great.
Isn't that just such a blessing and a joy to have that connection now? And I heard something last week that I love that really resonated with me. It's they're not our guardian angels, they're our guiding angels. And I thought, wow, I really like that, and that really resonates about kind of what their role is. I've I have known, and we have had many conversations, and the other thing I want to bring up is that you and I had several phone conversations around the time when your grandmother made her transition. And I remember, and this happens to me frequently with those that I love, having a phone conversation with them, and I began seeing cardinals. So cardinals would show up, like either during the time I'm talking to you, or like right at the moment we would hang up the phone, then a cardinal would appear. And I always knew that was your grandmother. Just she's just loving, and I feel her presence here, I feel her energy here right now. She's in the middle of this conversation, and it's so beautiful, because that's really what I want. And again, and you said it, this is there's no cookie cutter experience for this. And it also depends on where you are at and how open you are to the connection. So if it's just a real clear energy about this connection, and there's no resistance, then it's just going to be a beautiful thing. There's nothing to fear here. Mm-hmm. It's just them flowing their pure positive energy and love. And there have been so many times when I've known how to do things that I shouldn't normally know how to do. I'm not mechanically minded. I'm not good with tools or doing household stuff. But after my husband made his transition, I found myself many times over the last 15 years of knowing how to do something, or feeling his presence and his guidance. And it's like, oh, look, I did that, all kinds of stuff, from, changing the air filter on my car, or, I mean,
it's just such an incredible feeling, because like you said, you didn't know how to do those things, and here you are doing them. And in the case of my grandmother, I actually didn't expect to connect with her. I wasn't intentional about doing that. I was just open, and there she was. And when she started to come through, or I started to tune into her rather, it was exciting and fun. And I didn't even expect to connect with her after the first time, but she's been there over and over. And you are so right that she is with us right now. She actually connected with me earlier today and was excited about this call. So thanks for having both of us.
I love it. No, thank you for showing up to the party. And it's so funny now, your screen is zooming in and out every now and then. Is that you doing that, or is someone else doing that?
Well, that's a good question. This is a new device for me. And I think sometimes if I move my hands, it will try to get my hands in the picture. So okay. I'm going to try to sit on my hands so that doesn't keep happening. So I apologize.
No. I think it's awesome. To me, it's just your beautiful grandmother just playing, because they, in my experience, they have wicked senses of humor.
Totally.
wicked fun senses of humor. Like,
yes.
And like, for instance, something, and I know you may or may not have known or been connected with John Porter. He was in a lot of the Facebook groups that we are in. And, he made his transition last July. And I called him JP, and he loved that, because he said the only one that ever called him JP was his mother. And but I just, for whatever reason, and I things like that, I sometimes think are downloaded from, beyond. from beyond,
For sure.
their state beyond death. And so I would call him JP for as long as I knew him. And it was his birthday. It was right before the end of October. His birthday was at the end of October. I want to say the 28th. And so I was thinking about him because it was his birthday, and just kind of basking in his energy of where he is now. And I went to the grocery store. It's a small, like a Whole Foods type place. And I'm standing in the produce aisle, and this kind of disheveled man around my age starts, I've got like 3 things of organic orange juice because I love organic orange juice. And he said something to me like, "Oh, you really like organic orange juice?" And I said, actually, I do like organic orange juice. And, this stuff has really clean ingredients. And so I, stock up. And it sparked a conversation. And he said, "Well, hi, I'm John." And so I knew the minute, I knew that JP had something to do with that little, how they can orchestrate and, have their hands in our lives in such a positive, impactful way. And I just want those who are open and willing to embrace and understand this to know that these are everyday occurrences.
Yes.
It was like when I sold my townhouse when I left Denver. I had always, from the moment I made the decision to sell it, I had a price in mind that I wanted to sell it for. And that is the price we listed it for. Well, the appraisal came in, and it was an older guy who was the, appraiser. And then he was training 2 really young men to be appraisers. And when the appraisal came back, it came back in at $5,000 less than what. And, I was like, okay, but I really want that other amount. And then within like 24 or 48 hours, my realtor reached out to me and said that that they were going to readjust it before we could even revise the contract, that they were going to readjust it back to the original amount because of the location of where my townhouse. I was in an interior unit across the street from the park, and the comp that they compared it to was one that backed up to a busy street. So they felt, when they really looked and reassessed it, so it's like, wow, how does that even happen? That price that I wanted for my townhouse is exactly the amount I got.
Yeah. Like you said, it's hard for the human mind to wrap around the way circumstances come together. There's the word coincidence, which is not really the definition we give it. It is a coincidence.
Right.
And I love how you're describing JP's energy, because that's the same energy I feel from my grandmother, which is playful.
Yeah.
If I could just pick one word, that's the word I would pick. And it's so interesting to me because, as I said, she had a very heavy and painful life, and now is a playful energy. And I never expected that from her. I never expected really to be connected with her. So it's just a joy every time I do, and every time circumstances, come together that bring us into connection, and it's playful. And I have such a different and amazing relationship with her than I did when she was even here. And the reason I'm so happy to be with you today, not only to share, what I've experienced, is to touch on the fact that as humans, we have been taught so many things about death that are so far from the truth.
Yes.
And, with everything that's changing on the planet right now, viewpoints and perceptions are changing, and people are becoming more open and asking questions and downloading knowledge. And there's, especially about death, people don't like to talk about it, and they're really afraid to talk about it, based on what we've been taught.
Yes.
But there's so many heavy beliefs associated with death. Your loved one is cut off from you. You cannot access them anymore. You have to dress in black. You have to cry a lot. You know, the list goes on. And especially if you're over 30, 40 years old, you know, anybody would agree that
Yeah.
that's what they saw, that's what they were taught, that's what you're supposed to do. And there just have been so many experiences for me and many people that I've talked to, including yourself, that don't have anything to do with that, that sort of make it really look out of place to even have those reactions. You know, of course you're missing your loved one in the physical. There is
Sure.
no denying that. There is no getting around the emotions associated with that. And that's fine and natural. That's something that you have to process.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're supposed to believe that they're cut off from us and maybe they're even in a bad place,
Yeah.
and you know,
That's it.
you maybe don't even have permission to be happy anymore. Maybe the person who has had a person make their transition, you know, feels a great deal of guilt about something, shame,
Yes.
something that wasn't resolved. I mean, there's so many things that go along with the subject of death that we've been told, that we've been taught, that we've been downloading, that no wonder nobody wants to talk about it. So I'm so thrilled that you are bringing this conversation to the forefront with beautiful experiences, because
Thank you. Thank you so
it's so
much.
timely.
I want people, those who are open, and obviously I am not here to try and force anyone to change their beliefs. This is a law of attraction. You know, those that are seeking
Exactly.
will find what I'm sharing. And that is the whole point. But I don't, if I can do something to alleviate the suffering and the loss and the missing, because I knew after my husband made his transition, I knew unequivocally that he wanted me to be happy and to find my joy. And that, you know, I always said he was my greatest cheerleader when he was physical. He's even a greater cheerleader from his new vantage point and his new perspective. And oh my gosh, what what a blessing and what a fun ride it's been. And, you know, it's been 15 years, and there have been so many others. You know, my mother, uh, you know, the list goes on and on. People that, you know, friends, Patty Blankenship, you know, she was a wonderful woman who taught Abraham teachings and law of attraction teachings on weekly classes. And I actually worked with her. I was her quote unquote reader, and I read her handouts during these Zoom classes for a couple of years, and she was amazing. And then she made her transition in November of 2019. And shortly after that, I was at TJ Maxx. Something that she always said was, you know, self-love. I mean, she really honed and hammered the point home that we have to love ourselves. And I was in TJ Maxx just looking around, and there were these cute little wall plaques, and it said self-love, baby, self-love. And it was in pink. And I knew, of course, she loved the color pink. And I knew that was Patty. Patty was right there. She was shopping with me in TJ Maxx, and she was pointing. It's kind of like they become pointers, and they point us, you know, they help kind of point us and guide us in the direction that's in our best interest, you know, which to me, I just find so comforting. And why wouldn't I want to trust? They have no ulterior motive um, on the other side, if you want to call it that, the dearly not so departed. They have no ulterior motives other than pure positive love and goodness and upliftment. So why wouldn't I want to trust wholeheartedly and fully not only my own beautiful guidance, but their guidance as well? And so that's really, you know, what I want to do. I want to normalize these conversations and help people to see that there is a different perspective. And think about, you know, you said it so eloquently and so beautifully, Debbie, talking about how we are trained into all these beliefs surrounding death, which it's going to happen to all of us, you know. And but think of a small child, like a 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6-year-old. Think of a small child, and when someone leaves their physical existence, that, you know, maybe a grandmother, who knows, it could be anyone. But when it's like no big deal. If you said that to a 4-year-old, they would just kind of look at you and shrug their shoulders and go about their happy business. They wouldn't get all caught up in the pain and the grief and the suffering, you know, and something that has always stood out for me from Abraham Hicks is that when they're asked what is the appropriate amount of time for grieving, and they say absolutely no time at all. Grief is a wasted emotion. And but as we know, you know, because I'm sure you did too, you watched when Jerry Hicks made his transition back in 2011, and we kind of observed, and from afar we watched Esther go through her, you know, we're human, we're still human, we're still human. And so we're going to go through some of those things, and there's nothing, you know, there's no right or wrong way. And that's the other thing that I really want to shout from the rooftops is that we get to make our life work for us, and we get to assign any meaning to anything in our life, period. Whether it's about death, about money, about love, about relationships, about our children, about our spouse, about our mates. We get to bring that meaning, because in essence there are no others. There's only us and us.
Woo, I know. It's so exciting, and that's becoming so much more talked about and well known on the planet at this time, which is really exciting. And you've just made so many beautiful points right there. And I want to go back especially to the point about small children when they hear that someone has died. And children really don't have any concept of death, which is so perfect. Yes. And like you said, you tell them that someone died, they have no idea what you're talking about, and they just keep going on with what they were doing. And you know, eventually they download, like I said, and are trained. This is the response you're supposed to have, and this is how you're supposed to feel. And when they see adults behaving that way, they kind of take it on like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. But they don't naturally react that way. And that is for a reason. Yes. Because they know the truth.
That's not our natural state. That's not, we didn't, yeah. This is a human trained thing. And so I think that people like you and I and the many other amazing spiritual teachers that are coming forth right now to share their beautiful gifts that we came here to share, I think that, you know, we're moving in the direction of this becoming more mainstream, that people are ready and they're open to seeing things differently.
Mm-hmm. And you and I had a conversation a little while back that I want to bring up again, because I think it's so maybe at the forefront of this topic. So I was having dinner with about 6 other people. This is about a year ago, maybe a little more. And in that meal, someone said, "Oh, did you hear that Betty White had died?" And I did not know that. And my immediate reaction, based on what I believe about transitioning, I was sitting at the head of the table and I went, woo! And I was really excited for her. That was my natural reaction, because I believe that we come here to have an experience, yes, to learn who we are, to remember who we are, to grow in love, to expand in so many ways. And I just respected her so much as a person for the way she lived. And, you know, she didn't settle. She was always joyful on her own terms. And she left on her own terms. You know, I believe she left in her sleep one night at almost 100 years old. And I could not have been happier for her at that moment, you know, for everything she experienced and the way she experienced it. And the other people at the table, I mean, their mouths were agape, because that's not the response you have when you hear someone has died. And it was a little awkward.
I'm such a fan of inappropriate laughter and inappropriate, you know, because I'm so glad you brought that story up, Debbie, because, and Betty was right there with you celebrating. And just think about the amount of joy and laughter that she brought to the planet for all those, she was in show business for, I don't know, what, like almost 80 years or something, or definitely 70 years. And so she brought so much joy to the planet. And that is why we are here. We did not come here to suffer.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why, again, I'm so thrilled to be part of this podcast, that you're starting, and a conversation that will continue and grow, because I think it's so timely that people maybe open their thoughts, their perception about maybe there's a different truth. Maybe there's something to experience that we haven't been taught. Maybe it's okay to not be sad. Of course, there's space for grieving if that's what you choose. But if you don't, and you have joyous experiences after that person has left their body, sometimes I call it taking off their costume, which puts it in a completely different frame of mind too.
Leaving the meat suit behind. And
exactly.
It was like at my mother's, and trust me, at my mother's memorial service in 2015, he was a cowboy country church preacher, and he said something so profound that my mouth dropped open, because I didn't expect it coming out of that. But he said, she simply, and that's what he said, she has changed forms. And it's like she's walked out of, she was in one movie and she walked out and went into another theater to see another movie. And wow. I mean, that blew me away. This little country, his name was Dwayne. He was, like I say, totally worlds apart belief wise, but it was still the same message.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a beautiful way to look at it also. So again, I called it taking off a costume, but what you just said that he phrased it as was walking off the stage. And I often think about it that way too. The person was in their movie. They have basically walked off the stage, and now they're sitting in the audience looking at your movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good.
Yeah, it's just such a much more a relatable and non-resistant way to look at it, and it brings a lot of relief. And I think that's a great first step, to looking at death in a different way. And I basically actually never use the word death anymore. I use transition, or going back to pure positive energy, and I try to make it a word that people can recognize. But a lot of people still will stop me for a minute and say, "What are you talking about?" And I really, like you, want to make this a topic that is talked about, that is supported, comforted, opened to new truths. And I'm just super excited.
I had a wonderful, so Saturday was my birthday, and I took myself to dinner at a nice little restaurant at the mall, on the outskirts of our fabulous mall. And I sat at the bar, and the young man, he was a 29-year-old man sitting next to me, and we got to chatting. He was talking about being a creative, and he is into music and creating music. He has a day job, but that's what his passion is. And so we kind of talked about that, and we were kind of having a conversation. We ended up talking for like 3 hours. But the cool thing is, and trust me, we ended up exchanging, he put his phone number and his email address in my phone to stay in touch with him, because, I told him that I was starting a podcast, and he wanted to know that he wanted to know about what. And so I said, "You really want to know?" And so I started talking about it, but he was, and you could tell that his little brain was, the gears were spinning, new thoughts were being introduced to him, new ways of looking at things. And he was just a regular person, kind of on the street that I bumped into while I was eating my birthday dinner at the bar. And he said that, he said he found it really helpful, and just a new perspective. So I'm excited, because I think And I do think that that's what the year 2020 brought us, was a shakeup in the way our, the old systems and the way the beliefs. I think people kind of started waking up to, is this really true for me? It doesn't have to be true. There is no one way is the right way. There's no one way. And I laugh about that because I think about being a child and growing up in a Southern Baptist church, and that never resonated with me. I never could somehow find peace with it in my heart about how could you be a God of love, but then there's all these wars, because I grew up in, when I was a small child, I saw the Vietnam War on the TV every day. And that was terrifying to me. And I refused to, there were times when I thought that they were going to make me, when I got older, carry a gun and kill other people. And I was like, oh no, we're not, that's not me. I'm not here to kill people. That is not and I knew that at a very young age, but I didn't know what to do with it. So I think that people are, beginning to, more and more, the masses are changing, and how exciting that we get to be part of this transformation.
Yes. And the beautiful thing, and what I want to actually bring light to, is this is not about you or me or the experiences that we've had. It's about wanting everyone to feel better.
Yes.
About, we happen to be talking about grief and death, but there are so many topics about which there's plenty of room for people to feel better, personally and collectively. And that's the reason that I am so excited to be part of your work and for you to be part of mine, et cetera, bringing, as many people in as possible, because it's time. It's time. And
it's time
we came here for joy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's time for people to thrive and feel vital and alive, and to put themselves and the ones they love first, versus like working at some corporate or some job, because the other topic that's kind of a big bugaboo is money, and it's time for people to understand that it's just energy. It's energy. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. Yeah. So thank you so much. Are there any other stories that come to mind specifically about your beautiful, dearly not so departed grandmother that you can think of?
One day before she went into the nursing home, I was taking care of her so my mom could leave for the day. And I remember having lunch with her and videotaping her. And I did ask her beforehand, but she didn't know how the phone worked and really wasn't interested in that. But she did let me videotape her. And at the end of that tape, I took a picture of her laughing, and her head was back and her mouth was open. And it was just a deep, happy core emotion she was having of happiness. And I'm just so thankful that I took that picture of her, because I look at that often, because that is, to me, how she presents now. And it was so infrequent in her physical life for her to do that. But it's so characteristic of how she is now. And I'm just beyond thankful that she comes to play with me, and that I seem to be receptive to that on a number of occasions. That excites me, that I am receptive often. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up, if you don't mind. Do we have another moment? That people who are ready to have this conversation are the ones that are attracted to this kind of video and discussion, etc. And relating to that, you as a person, not you in general, as a person, are not going to have connections with someone on the other side if you're afraid of that. It's not going to happen. Like, this is stuff that people have to be ready for, want to know more about, are open to new perspectives about, and a little bit more and more each day. And the people who are open to that, it's interesting too, because as a little offshoot, the people who are open to that also still carry a lot of feelings of guilt, shame, things left unsaid, maybe even anger that the person has left. And there's a lot to be resolved there that, you know, people carry around as baggage with them for the rest of their physical life. And I think this is a great opportunity for the people who are attracted to this conversation to know that they can leave those emotions behind. It is possible, and have the joyous life that you just described.
Exactly. You don't, you can, yes, and it can be whatever process, works best for you to get to that point. If you feel you need guidance, and I'm going to segue into Sunshine State of Mind Services and the work that you're doing, Debbie. I want you to dive a little bit deeper into what you're offering that could help people make this shift.
Okay, I'd be happy to talk about that, and thank you. So what I offer is facilitation and facilitation means I'm basically your guide. I don't do hypnosis. I don't do talk therapy. I basically guide my clients through identifying and installing new beliefs that serve them. So if we're talking about this topic that we've been discussing for a little while, grief, and the beliefs of what happens after a person leaves their body, or how I feel about that person leaving their body, for example, or shame or guilt or unresolved issues, being able to create a new belief around those issues is life-changing. Yes. You know, if someone is a person who believes that after so-and-so, left their body, it must be my fault. I did something wrong. I can't be happy. I'm just going to have to trudge through the rest of my life. And that's a big sort of a life sentence. And that happens all the time, based on people's belief systems. Yes. And so being able to install a new belief in your subconscious mind can change the way you feel, can change the way you view life. And if that's the case, which it is, you can, from there, you change your perception, which means you change your thoughts, which means your feelings change, which means your emotions change, and then your behavior changes. Yes. And it's sort of a snowball of beauty, if you will. Yes. And so the work that I do centers on all topics. I facilitate with people and animals about health, about career, about relationships, about fear, about joy, really anything. But relating to the topic that we're talking about today, it's been amazing to watch people install new beliefs and live more free lives because they don't believe those old things anymore. It's no longer holding them back, limiting them. And to watch someone live from freedom, it's just the best thing ever. So
it is a true transformation.
Yeah, it really is. And it's very subtle, but powerful. The clients are awake during the whole process, empowered during the whole process. Again, I am a guide, a helper, if you will. I don't do anything to anyone. We work together to install the new beliefs that are going to help them move forward. And it's just such a joy.
And tell me a little bit more about, so the listeners will know how this works. Mm-hmm. So how does it work? Is this a one session? Is it a package session? Is it, tell me about how you interact with those that you are working with.
Okay. So a lot of people find me through word of mouth, but even if they don't, most people book one session to begin with, which is fine. And during the session, we talk about what's going on in the person's life and how they want to feel. And then we will go through the process to get them there. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people say, oh yeah, I'm just going to book one session. But once you have this transformation, you find so many other beliefs that have been holding you back. There's lots of places in everyone's life where they have beliefs that are not serving them, that have been holding them back. And if once you really grasp that you can change a belief and it can let you move forward, I mean, if you can really grasp that whole topic, there's just endless possibilities. And so pretty much every client ends up making another appointment because it gets kind of fun. Once you're like, oh my gosh, I can really do this. I can change these beliefs so I can change my thoughts, and I can do that. I can have that. I can be that. And it's very exciting. Yeah. So when a client books a session, we meet online usually. I do offer in-person sessions in Sarasota, Florida, but most of my clients are online, virtual, or we can do on the phone. It's up to the client, and it's usually an hour session, maybe a little bit more. It is non-invasive. It is totally painless, and it's really easy. And a lot of people actually have to address their beliefs in it being easy and fast, because a lot of people don't believe that either. And that's okay and completely natural given the things that we're taught, right? And the things that you've probably been through as a person on this earth when you want to make a change. So it's just really interesting and shows you right from the get-go where your beliefs are. Is change easy for me? Do I believe this can work for me? Do I believe in a different outcome for me?
Yes. And those are the key factors and the catalysts for, because, and I do think that, people again are waking up and are wanting a better life for themselves, not only for themselves, but for, if they're coupled, for their coupling or their families, so tell people how they can find you, Debbie. What's the best way to book a session?
Yes, so you can find me and the offerings that I have at sunshinestateofmindservices.com. I have an offering for a free 30-minute discovery call for any of your viewers who want to talk more about this process, ask questions, specific for them or about the process itself, and see if we're a good match for working together.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Is there anything else coming up that you want to share?
Oh gosh. So I think probably the last thing I would like to say is that, especially related to this wonderful conversation that we've just had, a lot of people really don't know what their belief systems are until they find a place in their life where they keep hitting the wall over and over, and they're going, I don't want to feel this way. Why do I have to feel this way? Especially about grief. And, everyone experiences that and has a very personal way of moving through it. And the interesting thing is that the research that has been done is that 95% of our day is run by our subconscious mind. It's like an uber supercomputer. And, the thoughts that we have in our conscious mind during the day are about 5% of what's going on. And so if you don't know what's happening in your subconscious mind, and you've got all these beliefs in there that are running your day, the ones that you're coming up against most often that don't feel good to you are the ones that you can change.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I just really like to point that out to people, because a lot of people that I talk to say, oh, I'm good. I don't have any beliefs that don't hold me back. And, it's, you can't escape it. Everybody has them. It's just the message to empower everyone. You were just saying, now is the time where people are wanting a better lives for themselves and for their loved ones. But also let's extrapolate that to the whole collective, because when the collective benefits, we're included, right? And
exactly.
every person who starts, changing their belief, changing their perception, changing their openness is part of that shift for the whole collective. The high tide raises all boats, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And good. I mean, inherently, again, back to the analogy of the small child that hasn't been yet conditioned to societal BS, but think about how they feel about themselves. They adore themselves. And so we are all the we are all inherently good humans, and guess what? Good humans do good things for other humans, and for the planet. And so, yeah, that's just, we're good humans. So let's pump up the vibe of the good humanness and bring joy to the world.
And experience our own in the process, which to me is like icing on the cake, right?
Exactly. I listened to a wonderful podcast last night, and it's like the work isn't outside of us, the work is inside. It's always comes back to us. And the work is in just the going through. I don't know where this is going to lead, and I'm tied to no outcome, but I feel that I'm called and I'm led to have these conversations. This is something that I've wanted to do for years, and I thought it was going to come through the writing of a book, but for whatever reason, this podcast thing came up, and I'm like, I'm going with it. So I'm just trusting, and I know, and just like yourself, when it's right, when it feels right.
Yeah.
So
the hell yes.
It's a hell yeah. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. I mean, it's pretty simple. If it's, the mantra for my life is always been, if it feels good, do it. And if it doesn't, don't. If it doesn't feel good, don't do something. Don't force yourself to do something that doesn't feel good. On this topic of dearly not so departed, beyond death, it's like going to a funeral. I have no desire to go to a funeral. I'm not going to do that, because the way I can best honor those loved ones is by living in my joy, by bringing that good energy, that pure liquid love energy to the world.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Janet. And I will just end off telling you this, and I haven't told you this before. I didn't go to my grandmother's funeral. Okay. Because I decided that wasn't the best way for me to honor her. Yes. And she and I had been connected many, many times after she made her transition, before her funeral happened because of COVID. So her funeral was 2 years posthumously. And I decided I wasn't going to go. And I texted my mother, and I thought she was going to be very angry. But she was very non-resistant and supportive. And she said, okay. And I said, I'd like to tell you what I'm going to do to honor her. And I created a garden in my backyard.
I love it.
And I made one of those kits you can buy at the craft store. I made a stone, and I put her name and her garden and decorated it. And, even now I go out there and I talk to the flowers, and I kind of spend time with her, even if I don't feel connected with her. That's sort of our space to spend time together. And that's just one way of interpreting and honoring of a person, in your life. There's limitless possibility as on how we can honor people who have stepped to the other side, who are looking through our eyes now and having fun with us and being playful. And I wish you so much success in your podcast or whatever else you decide to or are inspired to.
Thank you.
Talk about on this topic. Congratulations.
Thank you. And the same with you and your, I'm going to hatchet it, but your transformational
subconscious belief transformation. Yes.
Subconscious belief transformation. Yes. Same with you. And I'm sure that we'll connect again, because this isn't kind of a one and done podcast. And just, thank you for being here and for showing up and just for bringing your beautiful light and sharing.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
You as well. Take care, Janet.
Peace out. Thanks. Bye.